Record pause.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacy. I'm with the South Dakota Humanities Council, and we are starting fresh on our brand new time slot here with our brainstorming program. Lawrence was unable to join us today, so I'm stepping into the ring to take a stab at it. And I'm super excited for our topic and our guest today. Our guest is Dr. Hans Harmakaputra. He's a professor at Augustana University, and we are going to be talking about the three Abrahamic religions. So we can get a better understanding of them. And I'm excited to have Dr. Harmakaputra join us today. So what I want to start with is Dr. Harmakaputra, if you could give us just an introduction into who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you, Stacy, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you all and to facilitate the conversation about understanding Abrahamic religion. First, I will share my screen. Okay. All right. So I hope you all can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. So let's see. I will start with what is Abrahamic religion? So why is it called Abrahamic? So from the name, you can guess that these three religious traditions trace their shared ancestry to Abraham, who is a main figure in Judaism, also in Christianity, and also in Islam. So if you grew up as Christian or Jew, I think you're pretty much familiar with Abraham and the story of Abraham and Isaac and all the shared ancestry. Definitely, Judaism believed that Abraham is the first monotheist. And also that's the reason why these three religious traditions trace their ancestry to Abraham as the father of monotheism. Monotheism is a term for religion that believes in one God only. And Christianity, because Christianity is rooted in Judaism, so therefore Abraham becomes part of Christianity. And in Islam, because of like a central belief in Islam, Abraham is also part of like the prophet and messengers that God sent for humanity from the beginning of the world. I will talk more about it, but I hope it's clear that Abraham is the central figure in the three religious traditions, and these three Abrahamic religions are monotheist religion. And then what's in the name? Why is it called Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? I think for Christianity, it's very clear. Christianity is rooted in the name of Jesus Christ, and that's the name given to early followers of Jesus Christ. And then Judaism, I don't know if you remember, if you grew up Christians and familiar with the Bible, or if you're a Jew, you must have known this, but there are 12 tribes of Israel, and there is one tribe that is quite central and became the main lineage for David, King David. So the tribe is Judah. And after 6th century before Common Era, the primary designated people for the, well, let's say for Judaism is only the Judah tribe, and that's why it's called Judaism. And for Islam is an Arabic word for those who submitted to God. So if you know about Islam, usually Muslim will greet with Assalamu alaikum, and salam means peace. Salam has a, let's say, similarity with the Hebrew word of shalom. So salam, shalom, but in Islam, it is for submission. So those who submit to God. And then if we talk about timeline, now it's a bit tricky. If I use the perspective of faith, like the faith tradition, we will have different timeline. And here I'm talking from the perspective of study of religion. So from academic perspective, not necessarily from faith perspective. Because if you ask me as a Christian, then, well, Christianity starts from the very beginning of the world, right? So that would be the answer. If you ask a Muslim, then Muslim will say Adam was the first Muslim. So it will start from the very beginning of their, let's say, story of origin. But if we talk from academic approach in the study of religion, Christianity started after Jesus's death, Jesus's crucifixion, and it's around 1st century CE. Scholars debating whether it is proper to call the very first Jesus movement as Christians, or is it improper because they didn't call themselves Christians. But I would say 1st century CE is a appropriate designated time for the emergence of Christianity as a religion. For Islam, it started with the death of Prophet Muhammad. So again, if you ask a Muslim from Muslim perspective, Adam is the first Muslim. But from the perspective of study of religion, some scholars will say it's after Prophet Muhammad's death. And Judaism is a bit difficult for me to say. And first of all, I know this is being recorded, and I want to put this on record that my specialty is in Islam and Christianity. So I'm a learner. I'm a learner for Judaism, just like you all. But to my knowledge, the current Jewish people follow Rabbinic Judaism. So Rabbinic Judaism is a version of Judaism that developed after 70 CE. So in 70 CE, the second temple was destroyed by the Roman Empire. And that marks a different kind of Judaism, because in the past, like during the time of Jesus, Jesus was a Jew, by the way. During the time of Jesus, the center for religious activity was the temple. Like once a year during Passover, all people, all Jews from all over the world, diasporic Jews, will come to the temple. And now the temple is gone, they develop something else, centered on the Torah, centered on the writings of the rabbis. And therefore, for Rabbinic Judaism, the surviving type of Judaism that still exists today, I would say 70 CE is appropriate. But of course, there are scholars who will say that Judaism started from the 6th century BCE, because that's the time when Jewish people were exiled in Babylon. And then some other people, or if you ask a Jew, they will start, Judaism started from Abraham. So it depends if you use like a faith-based perspective or historical study of religion. But I hope this timeline gives you at least a picture. And then, wait, okay, so this is repeated. Oh, sorry. All right. So connection and separation. If all of these three religions connected to Abraham, why they go on their own ways? I think for Christianity, it's very clear that Christianity is rooted in Judaism. Jesus was a Jew in the 1st century. And the first Christian were predominantly Jewish. So they are Jews who believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, and the rest of the Jews did not believe in the same idea. And many of these Jews who believe in Jesus Christ were diasporic Jews. But as one can see in New Testament, there are stories of non-Jews or the Gentiles who believe in the proclamation that Jesus is the Messiah. So early Christians started as a Jewish movement, but then become more and more plural. You can say plural, diverse. And then by the 2nd century CE, most Christians are non-Jews. So that's where the separation becomes more clear, and this religion become a different religion from Judaism. While Islam came in a context where Christians were in the surrounding, where the Jews were in the surrounding, and there are also people who are not Jews or Christians but believe in monotheist faith of Abraham. And then Islam came, and Prophet Muhammad wrote the Revelation called the Quran, and therefore it becomes a distinctive religion. But Islam always claimed that the advent of Islam is fulfilling the previous revelation, previous messages, which means Judaism and Christianity and other faith traditions. On the same, at the same level, Christianity also make the similar claim that Christianity fulfill or Jesus is the fulfillment of the revelation from God, and that's why it fulfills what being promised in Judaism, right? So it's not new. It's a different claim. So there is connection, but there are also separations between these three religious traditions. And then if we want to talk about statistic, okay, this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong. I forgot to put. So the first one is Islam. So Islam has 2.4 billion. And then, no, sorry, Christianity is the largest, has the largest number with 2.4 billion people. And then Islam with 1.8 billion, and Judaism with 14.3 million. Okay, it's while I'm revising this table, I want to pause, and if you have any questions by far.
And I do want to just pop in and say that this is an interactive program. So we encourage you to ask questions. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, by all means, please, raise your hand or give the high sign. Let us know that you have a question or a comment.
Yes, so now the statistic is correct.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I had a quick question too, just for the sake of clarification. With the 14.3 million followers of Judaism, that doesn't seem like a whole lot of the percentage of the population that currently exists.
Yes.
That's a relatively small number.
I have to double check, but it depends whether you count Jewish people as ethnicity.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So those who are of Jewish descent or those who are practicing Jews, because even in the state of Israel, where that's the only state in the world where Judaism is the majority, not everyone are practicing Jews, as you have known. Right. So the number is small, but they're quite powerful. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think when I was doing a little bit of background on this topic, I think I did find a statistic somewhere that said, like 10 years ago, that Judaism was actually the least common of followers in the entire world, and that includes indigenous religions, that includes tribal religions, Chinese religion. That Judaism is actually the least
Yes.
common.
Yes. I think in the Pew Research, uh, like table back in 2010 or 2015, Judaism only shared around 0.2% of the whole population of humans, and that's less than indigenous religions. Primarily because indigenous religion becomes the umbrella term for all indigenous tradition all over the world. So every single country, almost all of them have indigenous people. But yes, Judaism is very small compared to other so-called world religions. Okay. Should I continue for a little bit before open it? Okay, and then the next slides, I will talk about similarities and particularities. I know a lot of people have questions like, are there more similarities between these three religious traditions? Is it safe to say that they have more commonalities, similarities? I think it's important to emphasize both. I think it's important to emphasize they do have similarities, but they also have a serious point of departures between these three religious traditions. So basic belief, practices, and ethics. The first obvious similarity is that they are monotheistic religion. They believe that God is one. In Judaism, God is called with this four-letter name. And for Jewish people, the name is too sacred to be uttered. So they don't say the name, but rather they call, anytime they see the word, the four-letter, they will call it Adonai or Lord. And then Christianity believes that God is one, but in the form of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And for Islam, God is called Allah. And I know there must be a question, or is this one God or different gods? My answer always, okay, look at the people who are living together. Go to the Middle East where these three communities live together for centuries. I came from Indonesia. It's a country with the most number of Muslims in the world, and Christians are the majority. I grew up Christians, and all Christians and Muslims called God Allah. So we regard the same God for these two religious traditions. If you go to the Middle East, that's also the same case. Christians in Middle East will call God as Allah, the Father, as Allah. And then, let's see, revelations. So these three religious traditions believe that God is not just like entity that sit on the throne and in the heaven, but also God that communicate with the creation. And that this communication is being known as revelations. And God's communication is being, let's say, revealed in books. So for Judaism, they call it the Torah, although it's a different name for, how should I say it? So the Torah, strictly speaking, is the term for the first 5 books in Hebrew scriptures, or in Christianity, Old Testament. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And of course, in Judaism, that's not only the books, right? They have the similar books like in the Old Testament, Christian Old Testament, and usually they call it Tanakh, Tanakh, which is abbreviation of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Nevi'im is the book of prophets. Ketuvim are the literatures. Um, and then Christianity believes in the Bible, and the Bible comprises of Old Testament and New Testament. So the Old Testament is exactly the same with the Torah or the Tanakh, but the order are different. So if you compare the Jewish Tanakh and Old Testament, you will see different orders, but the same content. And then, of course, Christians believe in New Testament. And then Muslims, Islam believe in Al-Quran, so the Quran. And Muslims believe that the Quran is the most complete revelation. Okay, so that's the differences. And then there are some particularities. First, the original language. So Jewish people and the Torah still use, or not still, but uses Hebrew language. And Al-Quran use Arabic. And they maintain the use of original language in religious rituals and practice. So one cannot say they have read the Torah or Tanakh without reading the original language, without reading it in Hebrew, or reading the Quran in Arabic. And then the second particular characteristic is the definition of prophets. So all these religions believe in prophet, but what they mean by prophets is quite different. Christian and Jews believe prophets are people who are communicating God's words, right? Someone like Jeremiah, Isaiah, Jonah, and so on and so forth. In the Quran, you will see similar names. You will see there are Moses, there are David, Isaiah, and so on and so forth. But the role is quite different. So in Islam, they believe that God sent numerous prophets to remind human beings and to make human beings believe in one God. The first prophet is Adam, and the last prophet is Prophet Muhammad. So between Adam and Prophet Muhammad, there are numerous prophets, including Abraham, Moses, David, and then Jesus. So all those names are prophets in Islam, but have a very different role compared to Christianity and Judaism. Also, Jesus Christ. If you are wondering, yes, Jesus Christ is in the Quran. He is called Isa. But as I said earlier, Jesus Christ in the Quran is one of the prophets. So Jesus in the Quran is not God, is not divine being, but he is highly respected on the same level as Prophet Muhammad. But for Christians, Jesus Christ is not just human being or prophet. Jesus Christ is the culmination of God's revelation. Okay, and then Muhammad as the receiver of entire God's revelation for Muslim. And these three religious traditions believe in spreading the message. So it's important that people know about the message, their core message.
I have a quick question, Dr. Harmakaputra. With the Quran, okay, the Bible, which would be applicable to both Judaism and Christianity, the books are written by several different people. Is that true of the Quran? Because the Quran, from what I understand, it doesn't have any like myths or parables, so to speak, but it's just it's God's own word. So is there who wrote the Quran? Like, where is it? Several chapters by several different people, or what's the difference between the Quran and the New Testament and the Old Testament, or like the Apocrypha and stuff like that?
Yes, that's a great question. So for Muslims, the Quran, and this also historically, the Quran all came from God through the word of Prophet Muhammad. So it is a verbatim of what God said to Prophet Muhammad through the angels or through direct revelation, like hearing the words in his ears. And originally, like the name implies, the name means read. but also recite. So the Quran was initially not a book, but recitation. So people memorized the whole Quran. And until now, if you go to any mosque, usually one mosque must have like one person who memorized the whole Quran. And all Muslims have to remember at least some verses of the Quran in there. Otherwise, they cannot pray. So in the Muslim prayer, they have to recite the Quran. And later, after Prophet Muhammad died, and then the next generation had a war where many of Quranic memorizers and reciters died in the war. They started the movement to write it down, and then they have it in this current form. So in the form. But if you ask about the content, there are stories that's similar with stories in the Bible, in the Old Testament and Hebrew scriptures. So there are stories about Joseph, the Jacob's son. There are stories about Jesus, but of course has a different content. But there are some that the same as well. Okay. Any other questions while we are on this topic of the sacred scriptures? Okay, not yet. Then let's move. Afterlife and eschatology. So these three religious traditions, there is one similarity would be every humans will have either good or bad ending, right? After they die. To some extent, they also believe in the resurrection of the dead or resurrection of the flesh. And at least the scriptures mention cosmic battle at the end of time, some sort of Armageddon in the book of Revelation, or in Islam also, this kind of cosmic battle at the end of time exists. But there are some particularities. For instance, if you ask a Jew, depends on what she believes. Not all Jews believe in like heaven and hell, for instance. Like at least I know some Reformed Jews who do not believe in hell, for instance. And then there are also Christians today who, because I think in the Christian tradition, many people believe that Jesus will come again for the second time, and that's the time when everything will end. But contemporary Christians believe in the renewal of creation. So instead of destruction, they believe that God will renew the earth. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about practices. Rituals, dietary restrictions, holidays, and scriptural studies. Rituals. Definitely all these three religious traditions have prayers as the central ritual in their religion. In Islam, it's called Salat. Salat, a Muslim have to do compulsory prayer for 5 times a day. And for Jews, there are certain times where they have to do prayer as well, including during the Sabbath. So when the Sabbath starts, they will light the candle and then recite the prayer. And if we talk about communal gatherings, some sort of house of worships, Muslim has a mosque. In Sioux Falls, there are at least 3 mosques that I know. I've been to 2 in Sioux Falls. And Jewish people gathered in synagogue. And of course, Christians gathered in church. And then if we talk about the use of original language, at least Orthodox Jews Maybe also conservative Jews use Hebrew in their ritual, in their prayer as well. Muslims use Arabic, while Christians use colloquial language, so the language where they are. And then practice of pilgrimage is important for Muslim. It is one of their 5 pillars of Islam. So the 5th pillar is pilgrimage to Mecca or Hajj. And for Jews, pilgrimage is also important aspect of the faith. Many Jews will try to go to Jerusalem, the holy city, while for Christians, pilgrimage is not that central, I would say. It depends on what denomination. For some denominations, pilgrimage can be important. I know many Christians in Indonesia will try to go to the Holy Land as well, doing like a Holy Land tour just to trace places where Jesus lived or Paul go to. And there are Catholics who also try to visit like important places in the world, including in Spain, Camino de Santiago. So it's a part of the central practice of pilgrimage in these 3 religious traditions. And then if we talk about other ceremonies, Jews and Muslims practice circumcision for boy. Christians, not so. At least it's not compulsory. There are Christians who also practice circumcision, but not universal. And then other rites of life, such as wedding, burial, and so on and so forth. For Muslims, it is important that dead body must be buried, not cremated. So almost, well, I wouldn't say all Muslims, but I think most Muslims will prefer burial, and the usual practice is they have their own place. So it should be like a burial place for only for Muslims. Before we go to the holidays, maybe is there any question for the rituals?
Did you mention fasting?
Not yet. I think not yet.
Okay, I figured you. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, but thank you, Serge. Yes, definitely fasting is another like important ritual for these 3 religions. Although Christians, maybe only Catholic that emphasize fasting during the Lent, but it's one of the important tradition in the religion. Muslims fast during the month of Ramadan for 1 month, although technically it's around 28 days. And well, again, I said that I'm learner about Judaism, so I'm not sure, but I know Jews also fast. I think at one moment. If you know something, feel free to add. But I remember that they also fast.
It's oh gosh, I'm like the name of it. It's a 24-hour period.
Yes.
Once a year.
Yeah, it's part of their holiday. Let's see. I'll Google it very quick. But yes, I think during Yom Kippur. Yes.
That's it.
That's it. Yes, during Yom Kippur. Thank you very much for adding the information. Okay, and then holidays. So in Judaism, definitely there are many holidays, and usually during the month of October, the Jews celebrated high holidays, they call it, and it's quite long. So I don't know if you are like, but when I taught multi-faith seminary in Connecticut, and I do have like several Jewish students. During the month of October, they will be very busy, and it's time for religious accommodation because they will be missing classes, but also a lot of celebration. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Hanukkah, and Passover. Hanukkah is often called, I think, popularly as a Jewish Christmas, I think, in the United States, because it always appears at the similar time with Christmas. So Hanukkah, and then Passover is also close to Easter for Christians. And then Christianity, I think you know, Christmas, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, Easter. And for Islam, at least there are two important holy days. The first one is Eid al-Fitr. The Eid al-Fitr marks the end of the month of Ramadan with all the fasting. They fast abstaining from food and drink, so from food and water, from sunrise to sunset. And it's kind of hard. If you got summer, then the span of fasting for the day will be very long. And usually they will have like communal prayer, and after that festive feast. So, and then Eid al-Adha commemorates the event in which Abraham sacrificed his son, but then God stopped Abraham and give like a lamb instead. So that's Eid al-Adha. And then there is another holiday in Islam that's quite important called Isra Mi'raj. And Isra Mi'raj commemorate the time when Prophet Muhammad was taken to heaven and have encounters with prophets and also with God. And I think, is there any? Okay. Any questions about holidays? Right.
I did want to mention, I have several acquaintances who are Muslim, and some of the younger men that I know that are Muslim are athletes, and so they struggle a little bit because even swallowing your spit, or when you brush your teeth, swallowing toothpaste, all of that is considered breaking the fast. So to fast for 28 days in such a manner is quite an accomplishment. And I think it's something to mention, because it requires a lot of faith. I mean, a strong belief in your faith to carry out a fast of that nature.
Yes, and usually in Muslim majority countries or places like United States that try to respect other people's tradition, usually Muslims will get some accommodation in the first few days. So the first few days of fasting is really hard. But after like 3-4 days, usually they're doing it very fine. So usually like schools will end early or workplace will end early. But yeah, the first few days are really hard. I grew up in Indonesia, so Ramadan affects everyone, not just Muslims, especially for families who have mixed marriage. So even if the husband is a Muslim, then the whole family will wake up for, if not iftar, but for the sahur. Sahur is the eating like around 4 a.m. That's like the food that you can put on your mouth before sunset. Sunrise. So very early in the morning, and then they have to fast until sunset. Before I forgot, they also have dietary restriction. So Christians in general do not really adhere to dietary restriction, except for some denominations like Seventh-day Adventists or other forms, other denominations. But for Muslims in general, many of them will observe halal. So the food must be halal in order for them to consume the food. And for Jews, it's called kosher. And if you ask me what's halal, what's kosher, it's hard. But the most important one, they have no pork. So the food should not contain any pork. But that can also means like there is no gelatin. I know for like health practitioner, sometimes they do not know, and their Muslim patient cannot take gelatin. Like in some medicine, they cannot take gelatin because the gelatin might come from pig fat. So dietary restriction for Jews and Muslims, most of them, but not for Christians, except some form of Christianity. Any additional question? This is my last slide, maybe after this. So if we talk about ethic, this is where I think many Christians, Jews, and Muslims share a lot of similarities. This is the reason why all over the world, including in the United States, Muslim and Jews can live side by side. Sorry, Muslim, Jews, and Christians can live side by side because they share a lot of ethical principles and ethical practices, such as faith, justice, compassion, and then anti-idolatry. Of course, I know anti-idolatry is usually only for like belief in more than one God, but idolatry takes many forms, including idolizing money. It's also idolatry, right? Or anything. One's own interest can also be an idol. So that could apply in different circumstances, but it gives these three religious traditions a focus to follow God and to follow what's being prescribed in the religion. And the most important one that really makes us all human, right, is care for others and the world. In Jewish tradition, it's called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world, mending the world. But also this is very strong in Christianity, to establish the kingdom of God. I know the kingdom of God oftentimes means Christian church, but that's not it. That's not very scriptural. That's not what Jesus said. And also for Muslim, care for others and the world is very important. So I will stop here and please feel free to have questions.
I had a question about the prayers throughout the day and how it works in the workplace. I'm curious because I'm not familiar with it, and that I know that a lot of places have to have that as signage and as, allowing people to practice. So I was curious about that and how that, works in a workplace for our religious freedoms and stuff like that.
Thank you. So for Muslims, there are at least one or two prayers that will coincide with the work hour. For the first one, it's usually done at home, very easy. And then the fourth and the fifth, usually it's after sunset. It's called Maghrib and Isha. So that's also do not interfere with works. I think Muslims vary in practicing these prayers. I've heard people, like I know a Muslim doctor at Sanford Hospital who tells my student that because he received the same question like this, and then he said, well, it depends. Sometimes he just stay in his room and pray. And sometimes Muslims can also combine the prayer. That's not like the best way, but they are allowed to do, especially if they are traveling. So if they are traveling, they miss the prayer, they can combine the number of prayer cycle into the next one. So there is some flexibility. Most Muslims will not try to show their prayer outward, like in public, because people might not comfortable, and during Islamophobia, some people might harm them. There are cases where people harm Muslims while they are praying, but usually they look for places, which some places you might not guess at all. Like maybe in Target, they go to the what's like this place for you to try your clothes. But finding a place is a thing. I've seen my friend go to emergency exit in Boston. We went to Boston, and then in the Port Authority, that's like the bus station, train station, and it's time for prayer. And my friend just go to exit place door because there are not too many people there, and he prays there. So there are different ways for Muslim to pray, either delaying it or do it, but in different form, or just find a quiet place and pray.
This is Mildred. I have a question.
Go ahead, Mildred.
Do all three religions proselytize? Convert,
Proselyte.
try to convert other people to their religion?
The short answer is yes. The longer response is how do you do it, right? I think that's more important, like whether they do it peacefully or by coercion. But Jewish people usually do not really open about proselytization. There is a anecdote that if you want to convert to Judaism and you knock on a rabbi's door one time, hey rabbi, I want to convert, he will close the door. And then you go second time, rabbi, I really want to convert, and again he will shut the door. And then third time, he will open and you say the same, and then he asks, do you really want to convert? So from the narrative of people that I know who converted to Judaism, it takes a long time. So compared to Islam and Christianity, where they are very eager, I guess, and the process is not too hard. For Jews, it takes longer time. It takes like even you have to face a panel of rabbis and asking questions. So it's more intricate process compared to the other two religious traditions.
But you don't actively go looking for converts or people to convert, like some Christianity sectors send out missionaries?
Depends on where you live, I think. I think it varies from one group to another. There are Muslims who actively trying to convert others. There are definitely many Christians who try to convert others, but also with people of other religions. I've seen followers of Hare Krishna trying to convert me. So yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, it's part of the tenets of the religion, but how people applying it differs.
I wanted to jump in really quick and let everybody know, here at the Humanities Council, some of you probably already know, we have a program called Book Club to Go in the Lending Library. And one of the books that we have in our lending library that you can, I'll put the link in the chat, that you can actually to have us send to you for book club is called The Children of Abraham. And it's about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's by an author named F.E. Peters. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you have a book club that would learn more about the Abrahamic religions, by all means, hop on our website and take a look at that. And I did have one other question that I was interested in asking you, Dr. Harmakaputra, is I understand that the role of Abraham, I think it was when he was told to sacrifice his son, and that Islam believes that the son that he was going to sacrifice was Ishmael, and while Judaism and Christianity believe that that was Isaac. And just from what I've read actually from this book, was the different that in itself, that difference is what pits the two against the religions against each other. Why there's such so divisive. It's such a divisive issue. Why is that?
Because in the Quran, the name is not mentioned. So if you look into the Quran, there is no, so it's only called Abraham's son, but there is no name. And I think in Hebrew Bible, which is also Old Testament, the name is being mentioned. And I think why Muslims generally believe that it's Isaac from other parts. So there are like from Hadith, or Hadith is the like Prophet Muhammad sayings, or from stories. Like there are stories about prophets, and it's mentioned there, but not in the Quran. So that's why. But if someone says that's the root of all frictions between the three religious traditions, I don't think that's the case. It's easy to ascribe things like when conflict happens to religious belief, but Muslim and Christians, for instance, and Jews have been know that they are different from very beginning, and they're fine with it. Many of them live together side by side. They respect each other. Of course, because of politics, sometimes there are discrimination and things, but in general, they know from the very beginning that they are different. That Christians believe Jesus is divine, and Muslims believe Jesus is only human being. And sometimes the theologians or the scholars from each will fight with words and writings, and that's where we get polemical literature. But people in general live in peace.
Would you say then that the three Abrahamic religions, this is kind of a big step to take, and maybe not a kind of a broad brush to paint it with, but would you say that overall the three are more similar than different?
This is just me personally, but I like to emphasize differences because the differences is what make us unique, and we have to respect our uniqueness. And from there, we can find a lot of similarities. But yeah, I think they have both similarities and differences.
Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. Does the Quran have, I've heard that, does the Quran have a passage about the clothing, how women should wear? I've seen here at the fitness club some women who come in and they do the bikes and all that, and they're completely clothed. And then I've seen the younger women come in wearing Western clothing, but they have the head covering. So is there a place in the Quran that says women must be covered?
So this is another thing with Islam. So a lot of things practiced by Muslims are not just because the scripture says so, just because the Quran says so. Oftentimes Muslims understand it as a general requirement. For instance, the Quran says that a man can have up to 4 wives. But if you go around the globe, most Muslim men do not have 4 wives, right? So there are things that being stated in the Quran, but understood differently depends on their own context. I think in the Quran, it's only mentioned that women have to dress modestly. I have to check again, okay? I'm not 100% sure, but it's very obvious that Muslim women always have diversity. If you, this week we learn about African American Muslim in my class. And African American Muslims sometimes dress differently. They wear different headscarf, which makes them different from Muslims from South Asia or from North Africa. So Muslims have different takes, even on what they call modesty, right? But the main principle, I think, for many Muslims is you have to dress modestly. But how do you define modestly is different. And also there are some cultural matters. Like when I grew up, a lot of my Muslim girls do not wear hijab, but after they get married, many of them wear hijab. So it's about like a commitment with family. It's so the different culture treat it differently. But if you go to Saudi Arabia, definitely it's being, or Iran, it's being imposed to women, right? But in many other countries, it's more about culture, how women wants it with themselves. So yeah, but I don't know about the Quran really mentioning it has to be this way. Oftentimes it's cultural. If you go to a desert in Middle East or in Egypt, and because it's hot, don't wear tank top. You will get burned. So somehow the way Muslim dress traditionally is for protection. That's why even the men will wear things very closely, like to close their skins.
I recently read a book called Why the Bible Began by a professor at Cambridge University in England. And remember when you said, you mentioned the Babylonian
Exile.
and that's kind of the midpoint of his book. After that, the Jews started having the Torah because you could carry the Torah with you, and you could add to it as necessary instead of having the wall. I mean, David wanted the wall, and Solomon wanted the wall, but sometimes it was easier to bring the Torah along.
I think we have time for one more question. Steve, I noticed that you had a question.
You're still muted.
Okay, now, obviously Christianity is composed of a dozen, maybe dozens of denominations, officially named denominations, and call themselves that, practice that. In either Judaism or Islam, are there these kinds of, not divisions, but categories of faith believers?
Yes, there are. I think in general for Judaism, there are Orthodox Jews, conservative Jews, and Reform Jews. So those are like the three main groups in Judaism. And then you have like ultra-Orthodox and others, but I won't go into the detail because again, I'm a learner. I don't have that in my head right now. The second for Islam, the biggest group is called the Sunni. So Sunni Muslims, and then the next bigger group is Shia. So Iran is Shia. So Iran is predominantly Shia Muslims. So they have quite distinct practice from the Sunni counterparts. And even within Shiism, there are different groups. Like the Twelver and then the Ismailis. In North America, there are quite a number of Ismaili Shi'i Muslims. And then within Sunni, there are different groups, but usually it's more separation of like law, like school of jurisprudence or theology. And sometimes scholars ascribe that Sufi is a different school in Islam. Personally, I think Sufi is a different category. It's like in Christianity, there are mystics. There are people who really attracted to the spiritual tradition in Christianity. So that's the same with Sufi and Islam. So they are more interested in the spiritual dimension of Islam. But we cannot categorize whether they are Sunni or Shi'i.
Well, we're right up on that 1 o'clock mark now. So I'm gonna end today's session by thanking Dr. Harmakaputra. Thank you for your information, for enlightening us. I want to remind everybody that thank you for joining us at this new time. It was we had a few people, I think, that were like, oh, where are they at 10:30? But yeah, it's 12 o'clock every other Thursday now. We're doing this bi-weekly. Our next session, November 21st, will be Dr. Brad Tennant and Dr. Dwight Mears. They're going to come and talk to us about the current issue of whether or not or how to go about rescinding the Medal of Honor awarded to those soldiers who were at the the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890. It's kind of a hot topic right now, and there's a lot of movement on that. So we're going to talk to those two gentlemen on the 21st. As for today, thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I hope we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
It was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.